ready to dive deep into caffeine.
Let's do it.
I think we all are in a way, right? I mean, who doesn't love that little energy
That's
boost?
definitely a popular topic.
Yeah, for sure. So for this deep dive we're calling Perk Up Your Life, we're really going to try to unpack our relationship with caffeine and maybe even bust a few myths along the way.
Yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions floating around out there.
Totally. Like, did you know the whole caffeine craze actually started with a bunch of goats?
Goats. Really?
Yeah. Way back in the 9th century, Ethiopian shepherds noticed their goats were like super energized after munching on these red berries.
Huh. So those were the OG coffee enthusiasts.
Yep. Those red berries were coffee cherries. And that's where it all began.
And now look at us, a global society fueled by caffeine. It's pretty amazing.
Right. Talk about an impact. But okay, let's fast forward to today. I always hear that people react differently to caffeine.
They absolutely do. We all have a unique caffeine sensitivity.
So it's not just me.
No, not at all. Think of caffeine as a battery for your system. Some people's systems just drain that battery way faster than others.
So like metabolism and stuff affects how we process caffeine.
Exactly. Genetics, your metabolism, how much caffeine you usually have, it all plays a role.
So maybe those guidelines about how much caffeine is okay aren't really accurate for everyone.
Yeah, that 400 milligram guideline, that's about 4 cups of coffee, is just a general starting point. It's really not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Makes sense. So how do I know if I've had too much?
Your body's actually pretty good at letting you know. Ever notice yourself getting jittery or restless after that extra cup?
Oh yeah, for sure. Or like, I have trouble sleeping if I have coffee too late.
Exactly. Those are your cues that maybe you've hit your limit.
Makes sense. So it's more about paying attention to how my body reacts, not just following some arbitrary rule.
Precisely. Tuning into your own body's signals is key.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, does the timing of when we have caffeine matter too?
Timing is huge. Remember that battery analogy? Each cup of coffee is like adding another battery to your system. But here's the thing. Those caffeine batteries have a half-life.
A half-life, like a video game power-up.
Kind of. It means that caffeine stays in your system for a while, even after you don't feel the effects anymore. The half-life of caffeine is about 3 to 5 hours.
So even if I have my last coffee in the afternoon, it could still affect my sleep later.
Absolutely. It's working behind the scenes, even if you don't feel it in the moment.
Wow, okay. This is making me rethink all those late-night study sessions fueled by coffee. I probably wasn't getting great sleep at all.
You were probably just borrowing energy from the next day.
Yeah, and paying for it later. So what can I do to avoid those late-night jitters? Besides, just not having caffeine late.
Well, first, make sure you're staying hydrated. Sometimes we think we need caffeine when really we're just thirsty.
Okay, so water is important, but what if I want to pick me up but don't want that intense coffee buzz?
Green tea is a great option. It's got caffeine, but it also has this amino acid called L-theanine, which actually helps you relax.
So it's like a calmer kind of energy.
Right, you get the boost without the jitters.
I actually love green tea, so that makes a lot of sense. But what about if I'm avoiding caffeine completely? Are there any good alternatives that can boost your energy?
Oh, tons. How about a glass of fruit juice or a smoothie? Natural sugars and vitamins. Those can give you a nice energy lift without the caffeine crash.
Okay, that's a good point. Which, speaking of, we have to talk about the dreaded caffeine crash. You know when the buzz wears off and you're left feeling worse than before?
Yeah, that feeling is all too familiar.
So what's going on there scientifically? Why does that happen?
It's like you're borrowing energy from your future self. Caffeine gives you a temporary boost by stimulating your nervous system. But then when it wears off, you're left feeling depleted.
So it's not really a sustainable energy source long term.
Exactly. That's why being mindful of how much caffeine you have and when you have it can make a big difference in avoiding those crashes.
It's like caffeine is a sprint, not a marathon.
Exactly. But there's another key to sustained energy that we can't forget about: sleep.
So even if I manage my caffeine perfectly, if I'm not sleeping well, I'm still going to be tired.
It's a recipe for burnout. Think of it like this. Caffeine's like jump-starting your car, but sleep is like giving it a full recharge.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we need both, basically.
Right. You're not just at the mercy of caffeine's ups and downs. You have the power to prioritize good sleep and build a foundation of sustainable energy.
That's actually really empowering. But okay, what about those times when I want the coffee experience, but not the caffeine? Like, can I still have my morning ritual?
Decaf is your friend. You can still enjoy the taste and the ritual without the caffeine kick.
Does decaf really have no caffeine, though? I've always wondered about that.
It has a tiny bit, but it's way less than regular coffee. And if you want something totally caffeine-free, herbal teas are amazing. Chamomile is great for winding down in the evening.
It's like a warm hug in a mug.
Exactly. A perfect way to relax and get ready for a good night's sleep.
Wow, we've covered so much already. From coffee-loving goats to caffeine crashes to the power of a good night's sleep. I'm feeling way more informed already. What else should we know about this caffeine stuff?
Oh, there's plenty more to uncover. Like, you know how everyone says caffeine dehydrates you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like coffee basically equals dehydration, right?
That's actually a myth. While it's true that caffeinated drinks can make you pee a bit more, they don't actually dehydrate you.
So my morning coffee isn't going to turn me into a raisin. As long as I'm drinking enough water, I'm good.
Exactly. Hydration is key, no matter what you're drinking.
Okay, myth busted. What other caffeine misconceptions are out there?
Well, there's the whole caffeine is addictive thing.
Ooh, yeah, I've had that one.
It's true that you can become dependent on caffeine and get some withdrawal symptoms if you stop suddenly. But it's not considered truly addictive like, say, nicotine or alcohol.
So it's more about being mindful of your intake and not going cold turkey.
Exactly. Most people can easily manage their caffeine intake without any major problems.
That's good to know. I've definitely felt that sluggish withdrawal feeling when I skip my morning coffee. What other myths should we tackle?
There's also the idea that all caffeine is created equal. But in reality, the amount of caffeine can vary a lot depending on the drink, the brewing method, even the serving size.
Wait, so like a tiny cup of super strong coffee could actually have more caffeine than a huge iced latte?
Absolutely. It's all about being aware of those differences and not making assumptions.
Okay, I'll definitely be paying more attention to those caffeine levels from now on. This is making me think about all the things that affect our individual experience with caffeine.
It's a fascinating interplay of factors. The more you know about different types of caffeine, brewing methods, and your own tolerance, the better you can fine-tune your caffeine intake to match your needs.
It's like becoming a caffeine connoisseur. We've busted some myths, talked about tolerance, and the importance of hydration. What else about caffeine should we consider?
Quality matters too.
Quality. What does that even mean when it comes to caffeine? Isn't it just about how much of a buzz you get?
It's about looking beyond just the caffeine content. Like, for example, choosing organic coffee beans means fewer pesticides and supports more sustainable farming.
So it's like being a conscious consumer, even with my caffeine choices.
Exactly. Just like with food, opting for higher quality ingredients can make a real difference.
That makes sense. Now, for people who are trying to cut back on caffeine, are there any tips to make that transition a little easier?
Definitely. One thing that helps is to gradually reduce your intake instead of quitting cold turkey.
Like wean yourself off slowly instead of going from 100 to 0 overnight.
Right. If you usually have 3 cups of coffee a day, try cutting back to 2.5 for a week, then 2 the next week, and so on.
So it's more manageable that way.
Exactly. It can help minimize those withdrawal symptoms and make the whole process much smoother.
Okay, good to know. Are there any other strategies for easing up on caffeine?
Another good one is swapping out some of your usual caffeinated drinks for lower caffeine options. We talked about green tea, but there are also a ton of half-caff options out there.
So I can still enjoy my morning coffee, just with a little less kick.
Exactly. There are even some naturally decaffeinated coffees available that taste amazing. They use special water processing methods to remove the caffeine without sacrificing flavor.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
And sometimes just becoming more aware of your caffeine consumption can be really helpful. Pay attention to how much you're having, when you're having it, and how it makes you feel.
So basically, be more mindful about it, not just mindlessly drinking coffee all day long.
You got it. That awareness can help you make choices that really work for you.
Okay, I'm feeling a lot more in control of my caffeine journey already. We've busted myths, talked about reducing caffeine gradually, and even touched on the importance of quality. What other aspects of caffeine should we be mindful of?
Oh, absolutely. I think culture plays a huge role in how we view and consume caffeine.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that aspect. We tend to focus on the science, but there's this whole social and cultural dimension too.
Right. It's not just about the caffeine itself, but the rituals, the traditions, the social connections that come with it.
Exactly. Like think about coffee ceremonies or tea rituals or how people gather around these beverages. It's a part of so many cultures.
And those cultural influences really shape how we see caffeine, how much we drink, even what kinds of drinks we prefer.
That's fascinating. What are some examples of how caffeine is viewed and consumed differently around the world?
Well, in a lot of European countries, coffee is more of a social thing, you know?
Mm.
It's about taking your time, enjoying it slowly, connecting with people.
It's not just a quick fuel up, it's an experience.
Right. And in some cultures, like in Turkey or the Middle East, coffee is prepared and served with these elaborate rituals. It's a symbol of hospitality, of tradition.
It elevates the whole experience, doesn't it? It becomes more than just a drink.
Exactly. And then you have tea ceremonies in places like Japan and China. They have deep cultural and spiritual significance, reflecting values of mindfulness and harmony.
It's incredible how those traditions can transform our relationship with caffeine. Any other examples that come to mind?
Oh, definitely. In South America, there's yerba mate. It's traditionally shared among friends and family using a gourd and bombilla. It's a symbol of unity and connection.
It sounds beautiful. Those shared experiences really can strengthen bonds and create community.
They do. And I think it all points to the fact that caffeine is more than just a substance. It's a social connector, a way to build relationships, to experience the world in a richer way.
I love that. It's a thread that runs through our cultures, our traditions, even our everyday social lives.
Absolutely. And it's something to celebrate that diversity of how we experience and enjoy caffeine around the world.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've gone from the science of caffeine to the cultural nuances of how it's consumed. I'm so glad we had this deep dive.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And I think our listeners have gained a much deeper understanding of caffeine.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. As we become more aware of caffeine, its effects, and its role in our lives, how can we each advocate for a more responsible and sustainable approach to how we consume it, both individually and as a society?
That's a fantastic question. And it's something we should all be thinking about.
Right. It's not just about our personal choices, but about creating a culture where caffeine is enjoyed in a way that benefits everyone and the planet.
I agree. And there are so many ways we can contribute to that shift.
What are some of those ways? How can we put this into action?
Well, I think education is key. The more we learn about caffeine ourselves, the more we can share that knowledge with others. It's about understanding the effects, where it comes from, and the impact it has.
So knowledge is power when it comes to making informed choices.
Exactly. The more we know about caffeine, the better choices we can make for ourselves and the world around us.
Makes sense. What else can we do?
We can support businesses and organizations that are doing things the right way. Those that prioritize sustainability, fair trade practices, ethical sourcing.
It's about voting with our wallets, right? Supporting the companies that align with our values.
Precisely. We can choose to buy from companies that care about the people on the planet that are involved in making our caffeine.
That's a great way to make an impact. What else can we do to advocate for responsible caffeine consumption?
We can support research into caffeine's effects, push for labeling standards that are clear about caffeine content, and get behind educational campaigns that teach people about moderation and personalized consumption.
So we can use our voices to make a difference and push for change on a larger scale.
Exactly. By working together, we can create a culture of responsible caffeine consumption that's better for everyone.
I love that vision. It's about a future where caffeine can be enjoyed in a way that's healthy, sustainable, and good for the world.
Yes. And that's a future worth working towards.
I couldn't agree more. This has been such an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation. It feels like we've gone beyond just the facts about caffeine and really explored what it means to have a mindful and responsible relationship with it.
I've really enjoyed our conversation today. It's been a pleasure.
Me too. And I hope our listeners feel empowered to embrace that mindful approach in their own lives. So as you enjoy your next cup of coffee or tea, remember you have the power to create a caffeine experience that truly nourishes you. Until next time, stay curious, stay mindful, and stay caffeinated.